The most cursed clans of Kentucky, when inbreeding created the legend of the cave demons. A dark chapter of American history that many have tried to forget lies deep in the misty hollows of eastern Kentucky's Appalachian Mountains, where sunlight struggles to pierce the dense canopy and civilization seems centuries away. A disturbing pattern emerged between 1887 and 1912 in the isolated coves and valleys of Harlan County, a pattern that would forever mark the region's legacy and create whispers of what locals would later call the cave demons. Seeking isolation from a rapidly changing America, the Blackburn clan first settled in these remote hollows shortly after the Civil War. Led by Patriarch Ezekiel Blackburn, a Confederate veteran haunted by the horrors of battle, the family retreated deep into the limestone cave systems that honeycomb the region. "The outside world has nothing for us now," Ezekiel reportedly told his 5 children in 1868 as they established their homestead, carving out a primitive existence in the shadow of the mountains. What began as a family's retreat from society would evolve over 4 decades into something far more disturbing. The first encounters with members of the clan are documented in historical records from the Presbyterian mission established in nearby Coal Creek in the spring of 1891. Missionary journals describe individuals of unusual appearance and demeanor who would occasionally emerge from the eastern hollows to trade for essential supplies. "They walk with an unsteady gait, their features distorted in ways that suggest more than mere hardship," wrote Reverend Samuel McPherson in his mission records. While several display fingers fused together like claws, others possess eyes that seem unable to focus in unison. Their speech is labored and difficult to comprehend, as though their tongues cannot properly form words. Recently digitized by historians at the University of Kentucky, county records from the period reveal that by 1896, the original Blackburn family had expanded through intermarriage with the neighboring Harper clan, creating a tightly woven community of approximately 37 individuals spanning 3 generations. Census takers largely avoided the area, marking several remote homesteads on official maps simply as not accessible. The first comprehensive documentation came in 1903 when Dr. William Evans, a physician with training from Edinburgh University, accompanied tax collectors into the region. Preserved in the Kentucky Historical Society archives, his medical journal contains detailed observations that modern geneticists have identified as classic manifestations of generational consanguinity. The younger members of these families display concerning physical characteristics, Dr. Evans wrote. Prominent among these are malformed facial features with jaws either severely underdeveloped or protruding beyond normal parameters. Many exhibit spinal deformities causing them to hunch forward, and several children appear to suffer from diminished mental capacity, unable to perform simple arithmetic or recite the alphabet despite being of school age. Most disturbing in Evans' account was his documentation of what he called the advanced cases, 3rd-generation members of the clan who rarely emerged from the deeper cave dwellings. According to Evans, these individuals scarcely resembled typical humans in their movements and vocalizations, having adapted to a troglodytic existence in the perpetual darkness of the limestone caverns. The local economy of early 20th century Kentucky, dominated by coal mining and subsistence farming, provided few opportunities for these isolated families. Their separation from mainstream society was further reinforced by the growing whispers among neighboring communities. In her 1976 retrospective analysis, *Appalachian Cultural Isolation Patterns*, folklore researcher Dr. Elizabeth Coulson noted that by 1905, the term cave demons had entered the local vernacular to describe the Blackburn Harper clan. Check if you're already subscribed to this channel. These hidden historical truths can't be found anywhere else. Only here are America's darkest family secrets being revealed with scientific accuracy and unflinching honesty. The scientific understanding of what occurred in those Kentucky hollows has evolved significantly in the century since these events. Modern genetic research provides a clinical perspective on what contemporary observers could only describe in terms of physical appearance and behavior. When closely related individuals produce offspring, the risk of recessive genetic disorders increases dramatically, explains Dr. Howard Garrison, a geneticist at Johns Hopkins University. First-cousin marriages increase the risk of congenital defects by approximately 1.7 to 2.8% above the population baseline. With multiple generations of close intermarriage, these risks compound exponentially. The historical record suggests that by the fourth generation of the Blackburn-Harper clan, which emerged around 1910, the genetic consequences had become catastrophic. Children born with polydactyly, extra fingers and toes, severe intellectual disabilities, and cranial malformations consistent with microcephaly are documented in county medical records from the Coal Creek Clinic. The isolation of the Blackburn-Harper clan wasn't merely geographical. Cultural factors played equally important roles. The post-Civil War period in Appalachia saw widespread distrust of government institutions. For families like the Blackburns who had fought for the Confederacy, this suspicion ran especially deep. Historical context matters significantly when understanding how such communities formed and persisted. The late 19th century brought industrialization and rapid social change to America, leaving many traditional communities feeling threatened. In the case of the Blackburns, this retreat from modernity became literal, with each generation venturing less frequently into contact with outsiders. These families created self-sufficient microcosms, explains cultural anthropologist Dr. Margaret Wilson. They developed their own internal economies, social hierarchies, and even distinct dialects. Contemporary accounts describe the Blackburn-Harper clan speaking a form of English so altered that even other Kentucky Highlanders struggled to comprehend it. The geographical features of eastern Kentucky facilitated this extreme isolation. The labyrinthine cave systems of Harlan County extend for hundreds of miles, creating natural refuges inaccessible to outsiders unfamiliar with their twisting passages. Geological surveys from 1922 document that the area inhabited by the clan contained over 40 cave entrances, many leading to chambers capable of housing small groups. These caves provided not just shelter, but a means of evading any unwanted contact. Local law enforcement records from 1907 document a failed attempt to conduct a census of the area, with the county sheriff reporting that clan members vanished into the earth itself when officials approached their settlements. The clan's subsistence patterns adapted to their unusual habitat. Agricultural records indicate they maintained small plots of corn and potatoes in the limited arable land but increasingly relied on cave-adapted resources. They raised unique breeds of pale, blind chickens in the cave chambers, hunted the abundant bat populations for protein, and cultivated fungi on the cave walls, practices documented by agricultural extension agent Thomas Wilson during a rare cooperative encounter in 1908. What modern science reveals most clearly is that the physical characteristics that so disturbed outside observers were predictable results of genetic inheritance patterns. The claw-like hands described in historical accounts align with ectrodacty, a condition where the central digits are missing and the hand appears split. The distinctive gait mentioned repeatedly likely resulted from hip dysplasia, another condition that increases in frequency with consanguinity. Perhaps most significant was the adaptive behavior to cave living. Human physiology can adapt remarkably to environmental pressures within just a few generations, notes Dr. Garrison. The accounts of clan members who rarely emerged into daylight describe classic symptoms of troglomerism, reduced pigmentation, enhanced hearing and smell, and visual sensitivity to light adaptations we typically associate with cave-dwelling species. The Blackburn-Harper clan represents one of America's most extreme documented cases of genetic isolation, but it wasn't unique. Throughout Appalachia during this period, geographical isolation combined with cultural factors to create numerous genetic islands. What distinguished this particular community was the additional element of cave adaptation, creating a population that literally lived between two worlds, the surface society they had rejected and the subterranean realm they had embraced. By 1912, the reputation of the cave demons had spread throughout eastern Kentucky. Local newspapers, including the *Harlan Daily Enterprise*, established in 1901, began publishing sensationalized accounts of encounters with clan members. While much of this reporting was exaggerated, court records from the period confirm increasing tensions between the clan and surrounding communities. The first significant confrontation occurred in March 1912 when a hunting party from Coal Creek claimed to have been assaulted by deformed figures emerging from a cave entrance near Clover Fork. Though no serious injuries were reported, the incident sparked a wave of fear through neighboring settlements. The Harlan County Sheriff's Office dispatched a 6-man posse to investigate, resulting in the first official documentation of the clan's living conditions. Deputy Sheriff James Hawkins wrote in his report, "We proceeded approximately 3 miles into the cave system before encountering crude dwellings. The inhabitants had clearly fled deeper upon our approach. The living quarters we discovered can scarcely be described as suitable for human habitation. They consisted of rough shelters constructed from timbers and canvas, illuminated by tallow candles that cast eerie shadows on the limestone walls. Most disturbing to Hawkins and his men were the artifacts they discovered. Among their possessions were crude ledgers documenting family lineages that demonstrated disturbing patterns of intermarriage between close relatives. Handwritten notes, barely legible, revealed a belief system that considered their isolation and intermarriage as a form of purification, repeatedly referencing keeping the bloodline unmixed and preserving what remains pure in this corrupted world. If you've ever wondered how isolated communities could descend into such genetic devastation, type "the bloodline tells all" in the comments. Your voice helps us continue uncovering America's hidden history. Historians now recognize that the clan's belief system represented a distorted interpretation of both religious principles and the concept of good breeding that was prevalent in the early 20th century. This period saw the rise of eugenics across America, with many states implementing sterilization laws for those deemed unfit, Dr. Wilson explains. Ironically, while mainstream society was concerned with preventing the reproduction of those with disabilities, the Blackburn-Harper clan had developed their own inverse ideology, viewing their distinctive traits as markers of special status. The clan's isolation had created not just genetic consequences, but a completely alternative worldview. Documents recovered from the caves revealed that by the third generation, clan members believed that the physical manifestations of their inbreeding represented the emergence of a new kind of human, adapted to life away from the corrupting influence of modern society. Theological elements became intertwined with this belief system. Fragments of biblical texts found in the caves show heavy annotation around passages relating to chosen peoples and separation from nations. Reverend McPherson, who made several attempts to minister to the clan, noted in his 1909 journal that they had developed a messianic ideology centered around Ezekiel Blackburn's youngest son, Isaiah, who reportedly exhibited the most extreme physical differences and rarely emerged from the deepest cave chambers. The most comprehensive contemporary account comes from school teacher Abigail Foster, who in 1911 encountered a young clan member named Sarah Harper at the edge of Coal Creek. Foster, trained in the progressive educational methods of the era, spent several weeks gaining Sarah's trust before being permitted to record her story. Sarah speaks of those who live in the deep places with a mixture of reverence and fear, Foster wrote. She describes rituals conducted in the largest cave chamber where family members with the most pronounced physical differences are treated as prophets. They apparently interpret the formations of stalactites as divine messages and have developed complex systems for reading meaning into the patterns of mineral deposits. Foster's account also provides insight into the clan's perception of outsiders. They believe that the outside world is experiencing a gradual decay and that only those who have retreated into the earth will survive what they call the coming cleansing. Sarah seemed genuinely confused when I explained basic concepts of modern medicine, repeatedly asking why outsiders would want to corrupt the bloodline with weakness. This alternative cosmology, developed in isolation and reinforced by observable physical differences between clan members and outsiders, created a self-perpetuating cycle. Each generation became more committed to the practice of consanguinity, viewing the resulting conditions not as disabilities but as evolutionary adaptations to their chosen lifestyle. What we see in the Blackburn-Harper case is how quickly human communities can develop entirely different interpretations of reality when isolated from mainstream knowledge, notes Dr. Thomas Richards, a historian at the University of Kentucky. Within just 3 generations, they had created a complete inversion of values regarding genetic health, reframing what medical science would classify as disabilities as spiritual gifts. The turning point for the Blackburn-Harper clan came in October 1912, following an unusually dry summer that affected their cave water supply. Forced to venture further from their traditional territories to access water sources, clan members had increasing encounters with local mining operations that had expanded into the region. County records document a confrontation at a Kentucky River Coal Company mining camp on October 7, 1912, when several clan members attempted to access a spring that had been incorporated into the mine's water system. The mine foreman's report describes confronting individuals of such unusual appearance that several workers fled the scene, believing them to be something other than human. This incident triggered the involvement of state authorities. On October 15, 1912, Kentucky Governor James McCreary authorized a joint operation between state police and public health officials to investigate the situation. The resulting expedition, led by Dr. Arthur Childress of the State Board of Health, represented the first comprehensive outside intervention into the Klan's isolated world. The expedition's findings, documented in over 60 pages of reports now housed in the Kentucky State Archives, paint a disturbing picture of the conditions they encountered. Dr. Childress wrote, "We proceeded approximately 5 miles into the cave system, documenting evidence of habitation throughout. The further we ventured, the more primitive the living conditions became. In the deepest chambers, we encountered individuals who appeared to have never been exposed to daylight, their skin almost translucent and their eyes seemingly adapted to the perpetual darkness. The medical examinations conducted during this intervention revealed the full extent of the genetic consequences. Of the 42 Klan members documented, 27 exhibited significant physical anomalies consistent with recessive genetic disorders. 14 were classified as having severe intellectual impairments, while 19 displayed skeletal deformities that limited mobility. Perhaps most concerning were the 9 youngest children, all of whom exhibited multiple conditions, including congenital heart defects, vision abnormalities, and neurological symptoms. The state's intervention faced significant challenges. Many Klan members fled deeper into unexplored cave sections, while others actively resisted removal. The expedition journals describe how older Klan members expressed genuine terror at the prospect of leaving the caves, shielding their eyes from even the minimal light of our lamps and communicating in hushed tones that outside air would poison them. The ethical dimensions of the intervention remain controversial among historians. While contemporary accounts framed it as a humanitarian rescue, modern scholars have questioned whether the state's actions respected the Klan's autonomy. By 1912 standards, the state acted with unusual restraint, focusing on providing medical care rather than criminalization, Dr. Richards notes. However, there was still an underlying paternalism and a complete dismissal of the Klan's own worldview and choices. The most challenging aspect for authorities was addressing the deeply ingrained belief system. Klan members who could communicate with the expedition team expressed conviction that their physical conditions represented spiritual evolution rather than medical problems. One expedition member recorded an elder stating, "We are becoming like the caves themselves, our skin like the pale stone, our eyes seeing beyond light, our bodies shaped by the true world beneath." For those Klan members who were relocated to state facilities, the transition proved traumatic. Medical records from the Eastern State Hospital in Lexington document high mortality rates among Klan members in the first months after relocation. Dr. Childress attributed these deaths to a combination of pre-existing health conditions and profound psychological distress at separation from their familial environment. The most detailed first-hand account of this transition comes from Malcolm Harper, one of the few Klan members who eventually adapted to life outside the caves. In interviews conducted for the Federal Writers Project in 1938, Harper described the experience. "The light was the worst, like knives in my eyes for months, and the noise never stopped. But hardest was knowing we'd been separated forever from the deep places where our ancestors spoke to us through the stone." Harper's testimony provides rare insight into how the Klan members perceived themselves. "We never thought we were sick or wrong-made in the caves. Those you called deformed were our guides, who could sense where water flowed through stone and hear the earth shifting long before tremors came. Out here, they were just broken people to be pitied." The state's intervention effectively ended the Klan's isolated existence, though historical records suggest some members escaped the expedition and may have continued living in more remote cave systems. Geological surveys conducted in the 1930s occasionally noted signs of human habitation in previously unexplored cave chambers, though no direct contact was documented. The story of Kentucky's cave demons eventually faded from public memory, preserved mainly in local folklore and obscure historical records. It wasn't until the early 1970s that academic interest in the case revived, when genetic researcher Dr. Robert Ellison discovered Dr. Childress's reports while researching patterns of recessive disorders in Appalachian communities. Modern genetic analysis has identified at least 16 distinct inherited conditions that appeared in the Blackburn-Harper clan, including forms of osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bone disease, Waardenburg syndrome, affecting pigmentation and hearing, and phenylketonuria, a metabolic disorder affecting cognitive development. What makes this case particularly significant to modern science is the documentation of how these conditions manifested and progressed over multiple generations of consanguinity, explains Dr. Garrison. The Blackburn-Harper case provides one of the most comprehensive historical records of compounding genetic effects. Each generation showed more pronounced manifestations as recessive alleles became increasingly concentrated in the family line. It's essentially a documented case study of what genetic science would predict in such isolated conditions. The cultural legacy of this history remains complex in modern Kentucky. Many residents of Harlan County still reference cave people in local folklore, though few connect these stories to the actual historical events. The limestone caves themselves, now partly incorporated into the Cumberland Gap National Historical Park, contain protected archaeological sites where evidence of the clan's habitation has been documented and preserved by the National Park Service. Perhaps the most important legacy is educational. The Blackburn-Harper case now appears in medical textbooks as a case study on genetic isolation and consanguinity. We present this historical case to students not as a curiosity, but as an important lesson in how quickly genetic diversity can be compromised in isolated populations and how cultural factors can interact with biological ones to create a health crisis, notes Dr. Jessica Montgomery, who teaches medical genetics at the University of Louisville. The ethical questions raised by this history remain relevant. How should society balance respect for cultural autonomy with intervention in harmful practices? When does isolation become a public health concern? The Kentucky authorities of 1912 answered these questions according to the standards of their time, but modern ethicists continue to debate whether different approaches might have been possible. What remains undisputed is that the consequences of consanguinity over multiple generations created profound suffering. Medical records from those clan members who received treatment document chronic pain, developmental disabilities, and shortened lifespans. The average life expectancy among relocated clan members was just 32 years, with many of the children documented in 1912 not surviving to adulthood. The physical conditions that once caused fear and superstition among neighboring communities are now understood through the clear lens of genetic science. The claw-like hands described in historical accounts reflected syndactyly and ectrodacty. The distinctive facial features resulted from various forms of craniofacial dysostosis. The sensitivity to light that kept many clan members in the deepest cave chambers represented ocular albinism and related conditions affecting the retina. Perhaps most poignantly, the cognitive disabilities that led outsiders to view many clan members as less than human are now recognized as predictable manifestations of recessive genetic disorders affecting neurological development, conditions that today are often manageable with appropriate medical care and support. The limestone caves that once sheltered the clan still wind beneath the Appalachian Mountains, their darkness now studied by geologists and speleologists rather than inhabited by isolated families. Yet, the human story that unfolded within those passages offers profound insights into our nature as both biological and cultural beings, how isolation shapes communities, how beliefs can reframe disability, and how quickly human groups can diverge when separated from shared knowledge. If you've watched until this point, it's because you appreciate the depth and honesty of our historical investigations. Leave a comment saying, "I watched until the end," so I can get to know you and understand who truly appreciates the stories on this channel. Don't forget to subscribe for more hidden American histories. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it informative and share it with others who appreciate learning about the complex realities of our past that textbooks often overlook. The most cursed clans of Kentucky may have disappeared into history, but the scientific and ethical questions they raise continue to resonate. Their story reminds us that human communities are fragile systems, requiring the balance of new genetic material and fresh ideas to thrive, and that isolation, whether geographical or ideological, carries costs that compound with each passing generation.